Hello, my scientists. This is Miss Olson. I am here to start your human body unit with you, even though I'm not here in person. So today we're going to go through and start off talking about the systems of the human body. We are going to start off with a warm-up, so you do need to have your binder and notebook ready to go. And then you also need the note sheet that the sub should have provided you with. The note sheet will cover the respiratory system, but we're going to go through a few beginning things to start off. So right now, you should have your binder out and you should turn to your warm-ups. We're going to start with this warm-up right here. I want you to put the following words in order from smallest item to largest item. So think about the size of these items down here. You're going to have to think back to previous units and figure out what's the smallest thing on this list and what's the biggest thing on this list. So at this time in the video, I want you to hit the pause button and pause it while you write down the date, the question, and your answer, and then I'll reveal the answer in a moment. Go ahead and pause. All right, hopefully you came up with the correct answer. Let's see what's revealed here, and I can get this stuff out of the way. Looks like the smallest thing on here is DNA, and in fact DNA is a molecule, so that's got to be the tiniest thing on this list. Then we have nucleus, and of course the DNA is found inside the nucleus. Inside of a cell is the nucleus, so the nucleus must be smaller than a cell. When you take cells and you attach them together, you form things called tissues. And one of the types of things you can form from a tissue is an organ, and our example organ is a stomach. And the stomach is a part of the whole digestive system. So that would be the largest item on this list. I hope you got that right. Before we move on in our human body systems, I'm actually going to take you to my website, because it's the beginning of a unit and we're going to start off with those learning targets real quick. I'm not going to take too much of your time, but I do want you to know what to expect. So if you go into the assignments page on my website, you can see the human body systems learning targets. I am just going to cover the regular learning targets today in advanced. There are a few additional targets that we will hit, and you can see those additional targets in bold on the advanced learning targets list, which is also on your assignments page if you scroll down a little further. So here's your standards. We'll skip those and go to the unit goals. This is a shorter unit. It lasts for the rest of the school year, but we will not have a chance to cover all of the human body systems. You do cover some of them in health in 7th grade, so I'm not super worried. But just so you know, we're not going to cover everything. You know, this human body systems, this is the type of class that it's actually called in college anatomy and physiology and in high school. And so you really could spend like a whole semester or a whole year studying these things, and we're only taking a few weeks. So we can't cover everything, unfortunately. The main things we're going to be able to do, we're going to identify the organs that make up the following systems. We're going to start today with the respiratory system, then we'll move on to circulatory, we'll go to digestive, nervous system, integumentary we'll talk a little bit about. We'll talk about skeletal, muscular, and then we'll also talk about the urinary system when we talk about the digestive system as well. So those ones we'll focus on. We're going to describe the major functions of those systems. You need to know the main functions. You're going to learn how they interact with each other to keep an organism like you, a vertebrate organism, which means you have a backbone, like you, alive. And then we're going to explain, like I said, the connections and how they depend on each other, and we're going to look at how their cells differ within each system. These are the terms that you're going to need to know for your human body systems unit, and these are the ones to focus on. So if any of these are unfamiliar, make sure that you get them somewhere along the way, but I believe in all of our notes we should hit them. Okay, so back to our notes here. I'm going to take you here. Okay, so now at this time you can put your warm-ups away and you can take out your respiratory system notes that were handed out. We're going to go through the respiratory system notes, the beginning. All right, I'm actually going to make this screen big for you. There we go. That looks better. All right, so the respiratory system, I want you to start with the main function. If you need to pause at any time this video so that you can finish writing, go right ahead. But the main function of the respiratory system, which is highlighted in this picture over here, is to help the body obtain oxygen and get rid of carbon dioxide and water. So your cells need oxygen in order to carry out the processes they need and in order to get the energy from the food that you eat. We talked about in ecology how you get energy from the food you eat, but you really need oxygen in order to make that happen. That process, if you remember that chemical equation I showed you, that process takes oxygen. So we need to get oxygen into our cells. And the way we do that is we use our lungs to breathe in, and the lungs directly transfer that oxygen into our bloodstream. So our respiratory system is actually working really closely with our cardiovascular system to deliver that oxygen to cells. In this picture, you can see some of the main parts. You can see this muscle is called the diaphragm right here. And when it goes down, it pulls air into your lungs so you can breathe in. And when it goes up, it pushes air out. You can see your windpipe here. You can see your nasal passage and your mouth and everything. That's where air comes in and goes out. So those are some of the main parts. When we breathe, I talked about that diaphragm. If this muscle right here, it's kind of a big, large, flat muscle, so we're looking at it from the side. When this moves down, it actually opens up space in your chest cavity and your lungs expand and fill up. That forces air down into the lungs. So when you're breathing in, when you inflate your lungs, it's actually a muscle that's increasing the volume of your chest cavity and it's forcing that air down. Then when you breathe out, that diaphragm goes the other direction and squeezes your chest cavity, and so your lungs deflate and that air comes back out. And so the air that you're breathing out is carbon dioxide, and the air that you're breathing in is oxygen. The oxygen gets delivered into your bloodstream, which goes to your cells. And then when your cells are taking in oxygen, they're actually getting rid of carbon dioxide. So that carbon dioxide goes into the blood, gets delivered back to the lungs, and then the lungs breathe it out. And all that happens in the matter of one breath, which is amazing. I wanted to remind you of this process. You might be thinking, Miss Olson, photosynthesis, this is not what we're talking about anymore. But it is. Remember that chemical equation I showed you? So let's see, off the top of my head here, we have plants start off with water, H2O, and they also take in oxygen. I'm sorry, CO2, 6 carbon dioxide. We take in oxygen. Let me fix that. 6 CO2 molecules. And they take that and they use light energy to turn it into glucose, which is C6H12O6, and then they're left with 6 leftover oxygen molecules. I reduced this one, so you're not going to see the leftover water as well. But this is the equation for photosynthesis. Now, if I take and turn this arrow around and reverse the process, that's actually what's happening in your cells. And it happens in your mitochondria. Those are the ones, if you remember from your cell unit, that are creating that energy. It's called ATP, that molecule, energy. So what's happening in your mitochondria is that you're breathing in oxygen because of respiration, and you're breaking apart these sugar molecules, which creates this ATP energy when you break it apart. And then what's left over is this extra carbon dioxide and some water. So the molecules just get rearranged. So you are actually doing the exact opposite of photosynthesis in your mitochondria. It's kind of awesome and cool, I think, at least. All right, so I have a quick video clip for you on why we breathe. I just want to give you a heads up. The person narrating has a British accent and pronounces some of the words differently than you might expect. So that's always fun, right? Okay, here we go.
In order to stay alive, the body has to breathe air. We breathe in oxygen and we breathe out carbon dioxide. This process is known as respiration. Breathing happens automatically. Every day, the body breathes about 20,000 times. By the time we reach 70 years old, that's about 600 million breaths. All of this breathing occurs because of the respiratory system, which includes the nose, throat, voice box, windpipe, and lungs. At the top of the respiratory system, the nostrils bring air into the nose, where it's filtered, warmed, and moistened. Tiny hairs called cilia protect the nasal passageways and other parts of the respiratory tract and filter out dust and other particles that enter the nose through the breathed air. Air can also be breathed in through the mouth. The two airways of the nose and mouth meet up at the pharynx, which is located at the back of the throat. The pharynx carries both food and air and is used for digestion and respiration. One path is for food. This is called the esophagus, which leads on to the stomach. The other side is for air. It's called the trachea. A small flap of tissue, called the epiglottis, covers the air-only passage when we swallow. This stops food and liquid from going into the lungs. The larynx, or voice box, is located at the top of the trachea, the air-only pipe. This is where our vocal cords are. The trachea, or windpipe, which is a 2 to 3 centimetre tube, then extends downwards from the bottom of the larynx for about 12 centimetres. The walls of the windpipe are made strong by stiff rings of cartilage that keep it open. The trachea is also lined with tiny hairs. They sweep foreign particles and fluids out of the airway, keeping them from entering the lungs. The windpipe divides into two branches, and each one of these enters one of the two lungs of the body. Each branch resembles the limbs of a tree, dividing into smaller, finer branches called bronchioles. The bronchioles end in tiny air sacs called alveoli, which look a bit like grapes. These structures enable fresh air to get to the air sacs, which are surrounded by tiny blood vessels, or capillaries. The oxygen passes through these air sacs and travels through the capillary walls into the bloodstream. At the same time, carbon dioxide transfers from the bloodstream into the air sacs, where it gets breathed out of the body. When we exercise, the body needs more oxygen to feed the muscles as they work harder. The body responds by breathing more quickly and deeply. As the cells of the muscles use up more oxygen, the lungs have to work harder to keep up the supply. The respiratory system then speeds up to supply the body with much needed oxygen, and also to get rid of the carbon dioxide waste in the system. Over time, exercising also helps our chest cavity to get bigger, which enables the body to increase the amount of air it takes in. More capillaries form around the air sacs, so the body gets better at swapping oxygen and carbon dioxide gases. We can see how the body's respiratory system helps the body to move about, and is influenced by regular and ongoing physical activity as well.
All right, that's the end of that. I just think that's so cool that your body can actually change the amount of oxygen it can take in, and it'll actually create more capillaries. It'll actually increase the size of your lungs and the capacity if you use them more. So exercising has a really big impact on your body. It actually changes how well your body works. So that's the video clip. So the last thing you're going to do on your note sheet here is you're going to fill out the different parts of the respiratory system. I know this is a little bit cut off. I apologize for that. But basically, you're going to label the different parts on the picture on the back of your note sheet. So while you're doing this, you may want to just pause the video so that this is the screen you see, so you can go through those different structures of the respiratory system, so you can find them on your diagram. After you are done with this diagram, so you may have to go back to this part when you're ready. After you're done with this diagram, you're going to use your extra time to take on some extensions on my website. So if you go to my website and you go to the bottom of the Systems of the Human Body list of assignments, there's the Human Body Systems extensions. And on this list, we have a bunch of extensions for you to explore and have fun with when you finish your notes for each system. So today, since we are talking about the respiratory system, you need to stick with the respiratory system extensions. We'll get a chance to try all of these, but today I want you to focus on the respiratory system. You can play the respiratory system hoops game. That's fun. I recommend headphones or turn the volume down because it gets obnoxious. The respiratory system interactive is pretty cool. And then this one is in organs of the respiratory system. So if you weren't real familiar with the labeling section, this would be a really good practice. If you finish all of these within your class time, you go through all of the respiratory system extensions and you're bored with them, then you have the option you could move on and explore them in the all systems extensions. You could look at the Biodigital Human Interactive site or the Human Body Systems Guide. But I would highly, highly recommend that you just stick with respiratory system for today instead of moving on to the all systems. We'll save those for review at the end. So that's after you finish your labeling. So at this point, you're going to want to come back to this part here. I'll make it full screen for you and finish labeling the sections of the respiratory system in your notes. And at this point, if you want to pause, that would be great. Have a great rest of your day and good work today. Thanks. Bye.